I'm choosing to teach this lesson as a continuation of the unit that we have been working on. So our school, 100% of the teachers have been Project GLAD trained, and what you're going to see today are components of that training. So it's an initiative that our complex area has decided to use because of our high ELL population, but it's also good teaching practice. The strategies can be used with anybody, and it just develops high-level academic vocabulary. What you're going to see today is applying the high-level academic vocabulary to a writing piece, comparing and contrasting two different plants from different environments, which will lead them into their final project of designing a plant that can survive in any environment. So knowing what kind of adaptations these plants have made will allow them to actually do their final project. So we are trying to be progressive and use the next generation science standards in conjunction with hiccups, even though the state hasn't adopted them yet. So the next generation science standard that applies for this lesson talks about the fact that the kids can make an argument that plants can sustain life only on air and water. So today's lesson, I kind of broke that down to something a little bit more manageable. So the learning target for today is that they can compare and contrast plants from two different environments, hopefully seeing that even though they have different adaptations, different structures and functions, that they still have the main survival components of needing air and water to survive. I'm gonna check for understanding. We'll do that again. I will be checking for understanding through formative assessment, just questioning and discussion techniques. Going to be transcribing what they write on the sentence patterning chart, or not the sentence patterning chart, the cooperative strip paragraph. And together we'll be editing it and making revisions. The students will then have to finish it. So that'll be their summative assessment, is the finished product of their writing. I'll also be checking for behaviors using the other Project GLAD strategy of behavior scouts, and I have something called literacy awards that tie into our learning. They're called the Super Botanist Award, and it has just more information about different plants from different environments that they can get rewarded for good behavior. So the expectations I have, I kind of stole the idea from this company called IDEO. Dateline did a special on them, and they had some great things up on the wall, kind of like their mantra. And I turned it into our general learning agreements that we use every single time we do a project. The other thing I've incorporated is, again, the Project GLAD strategy of scouts. So I picked two random people, tell them they're going to be scouting for good behavior. We'll go through some examples of what good behavior looks like according to our behavior matrix, our 3 Bs: be safe, be responsible, be respectful. And then throughout the lesson, about every 20-25 minutes, I usually stop, check in with my scouts. Who did you see exhibiting good behavior? They call out their names, they give a justification as to why, and then they get rewarded with that literacy award. So they kind of become experts in another plant and can show off to their classmates. And then at the very end, I have somebody who has the overall best behavior for the lesson, and I usually give them a small treat like a lollipop or dolphin tickets that they can spend at the school store, that kind of thing. Well, the biggest question is going to be how do plants from different environments compare and contrast? That's going to kind of be the overarching question for today. I'm going to be using a lot of language scaffolding to help them get to that point. So you're going to see different tier levels of questions, and probably different answering levels as well, just based on are they ELL, are they ELL being monitored, they have a little bit more language than the rest of them. The lesson should be pretty familiar because we did it on Friday. We did the pre-lesson on Friday, so they should remember the language. I shouldn't have to use that many Tier 1 level questions. Hopefully I can start hitting those Tier level 2, 3, and 4s to help them with their writing. The lesson is engaging just based off of the comparative input chart that we have. So when I started this, I drew everything out in pencil, and then I traced over it in whiteboard marker after going through every single vocabulary word and idea with them. So I'm kind of drawing it out as I teach it to them. We use something called picture file cards, so vibrant, colorful pictures of the plants and the environments and the structures that we're discussing. So today, because they've already finished the chart, we're going to be using a review. So I have different words that were on the chart, and I'm going to be asking them to come up, put it up on the chart, describe it back to their peers so I can see, number one, are they using complete sentences? Are they using the vocabulary correctly? Do they remember what the structures and its functions and adaptations were? And if not, then we'll spend a couple minutes reviewing everything together. And then can they associate the picture with the word to see, have they made a concrete connection? This lesson is meaningful to their lives in particular because they live in Kalihi Valley and they're surrounded by all different types of plants, and especially now with all of the news that's happening in Syria and how they're having to go into that seed storage locker to take all of these indigenous plants from the storage locker to replant them once the civil war in Syria is over. I want them to see how learning about plants is not just an issue for them, but a global issue that can be affected by many different things, such as civil war. So knowing how plants fit into the ecosystem and how vital they are, they're going to be able to see what role they play in their lives. So that'll kind of play into the next lesson where we're going to look at the ecosystem of the Hawaiian wetlands and how the taro played such a huge role in the life of Native Hawaiians.